Are you legally minimizing your future tax burden and staying compliant in today's complex tax code? If not, our sponsor, Michelou Consulting, has over 30 years of experience providing top-quality professional services in accounting and tax preparation for a wide variety of clients like you. Whether you need a tax return filing, planning, bookkeeping, financial statements, full-service payroll, or a corporate or individual tax return filing, I personally recommend you contact Jeffrey Ressler, CPA, at 561-237-5264. That number again is 561-237-5264. And you can visit his website at jrcpa.net. That's jrcpa.net. Tell Jeff that Chad Deckard sent you from this podcast to receive his special rate for listening to this show. I thank you very much, and you can also refer to the description of this video or audio, however it is syndicated to you. Broadcasting from the city of sun and rain off the Atlantic Ocean in Boca Raton, Florida. Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation and around the world. I'm your host, Chad Deckard, and welcome to my Internet Marketing Pro podcast show. My shows will cover how to grow your business as well as topics on tips, tricks, and techniques, digital lifestyles, the future of finance, and entrepreneurism. Thank you for tuning into my show as we begin this adventure together, exploring many great things to come. Now, let's cover a quick few announcements before we get started. And like I do before every show, I'd just like to show my appreciation and gratification for all of you and the feedback that you've been sending me and what a difference it makes in motivating me to put these shows out and continually think of the next subject matter I'd like to explore with you all. I am also really excited about you all helping me get more subscribers by sharing my content with your social network. My weekly listener base is growing from week to week, and that's the greatest payoff my listeners can do for me by giving back for my time and efforts in putting into this show, because my sponsor just pays for the base, equipment, and time on my show. If you like my show and you find it resourceful, please do your social network a favor and share and like, give me a review, post, leave a comment, and most of all, please subscribe to my show. I greatly appreciate your efforts and support, and also be aware that you can also get a plethora of archive shows that I've covered from a variety of really awesome topics that you should really check out. So let's get on with the show. All right, hello and welcome. Today we have a special guest. His name is Roy Weissman, and he's with us here today. And how you doing, Roy?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Really enjoyed my holiday weekend. How about you?
Oh, it was pretty good. It was mellow. I live in New York, so it was actually what's nice sometimes on these weekends is a lot of the local people go away for the weekend, so it's nice and quiet.
Yeah, at least it was nice and quiet compared to the central part of the country where there's all kinds of noise, like San Antonio and Oklahoma and all these other states getting all the terrible weather, so they're not able to enjoy the great weather. You mean you didn't get any snow? I heard that like some places up north actually got something like 34 inches of snow. Can you believe that?
I know. It's pretty crazy. It doesn't want to get summer this year. I don't know. No,
Yeah.
in New York, it was just Saturday and Sunday were a little bit cold, and Saturday was a little bit windy. So there was actually an art show that was scheduled to happen down in Washington Square, and they actually canceled it for Saturday because it was so windy, because everybody's stuff would blow away. So, and then Sunday was chilly, and yesterday was great. But Saturday and Sunday just used it as an opportunity to catch up with stuff and clean up stuff, and there's never enough time to get through all those things.
Well, I was going to say, my heart goes out for those people, obviously, in those places, in those areas that weren't able to actually enjoy their weekend like so many of us. And, of course, we send our gratitude out to all the soldiers and service people that have served this country throughout, the United States, the history of the United States. But we're going to jump right into the show. Today we have a really interesting and awesome topic. I'm really excited about today's show. We're going to talk about something that isn't really talked about on very many places or any shows that I'm aware of. And I'm basically a podcasting junkie. And not only do I love podcasting myself, but I listen to many, many other people and their shows. And I've never really seen this topic, which we have today. And it's going to be about negotiating for traffic. And obviously you've more recently have developed a course for negotiating traffic. So, why did you develop this course for negotiating traffic? Excuse me.
Well, I think that it's interesting because when you talk about negotiations, a lot of people say, well, what do I need to learn that for? You know, I know how to negotiate. I bought plenty of things in life. I always find a way to get a good deal. And I think that's really the essence of it, in that negotiating isn't necessarily about finding a way to get a better price. It's about finding a way to get the best value, to get the best deal overall. And I think a lot of people think of negotiating as they go to a street fair and someone says, this item is $10, and they say, I'll give you $5, and the person says $7, and they say, great, and now in their minds they negotiated a fantastic deal. The reality is, for all they know, that same item is for sale from Amazon or a store down the street for $5 or $4 or free. The reality is that wasn't negotiating. That is really just bargaining. That at that point in time, they bargained the price down, but they have no idea if they completed a successful negotiation. And I think a lot of people don't realize that they're a foundation, that the actual discussion part of the negotiation is almost the least amount of the process. The most significant part of the process is preparation and strategy and what you're going to do in the negotiation and being prepared. And I think I saw that a lot of people really don't understand that. And I even teach this course at Northeastern, and I teach it online, and it's amazing how even after teaching people certain foundational concepts, they still don't do them. And that's why, I guess, to those people who choose to take the course and learn the foundational concepts and learn the key strategies and tactics, you will have an enormous edge over most people in getting what you want and getting the best overall deal.
Yeah, let me ask you, can't most people negotiate and themselves, and isn't it just about how much one pays for whatever product or service? I mean, I know you just said something like that, but could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I think that it depends on what a lot of people start a negotiation. I teach several courses, and the first thing I always say in like every class is, what's your objective? A lot of people start doing something and they kind of don't even think about what their goal is, what they want to achieve with something. So they start off with something. I mean, how many times have you gone out with people? And again, I'll use another simple example, walking down the street at a street fair or an event, and you see something, oh, that looks interesting. How much is it? $10. I'll give you $5, $7, we're done. Mm-hmm. Now, the funny part about that, most of the stuff people buy at these things, like they buy on vacations, comes home and sits on the shelf, never to be touched again. And then they say to themselves, why did I do this? And then the same person who spent hundreds of dollars on this stuff, a week later says, how am I going to afford that new piece of furniture? We don't have the cash. And this all comes down to the fact that you never sat down and said, well, what was the objective? You went on vacation to go on vacation, not to see how much you could spend at street fairs. But that's kind of like fun, so people do it, right? And I think in buying whatever you're buying, in the case of traffic, people say, well, I want to get advertising, I want to get traffic to my site, and they say, I just need more traffic. And they go and they buy traffic. And then they wonder why they get no return on it. Well, because was getting traffic their objective, or was their objective to sell products? And was their objective to sell products profitably? Now it significantly changes your approach, because if your objective is to sell products profitably, then you have to truly sit down and do your homework in advance to understand what your costs are and what it's going to cost to send the traffic to you, and then to try to determine who your best customers are, or your best prospects are, rather, so you can figure out who is the best person to buy traffic from, and then to figure out, you have to have an objective, how much should you pay for that? So before you ever get on the phone or meet in person or send an email and ask questions, you need to do all this work up front. And I think a lot of people just figure, I'll just pay X and I'll just get it. That sounds like a good price, because the guy wants $10 1,000, I can get it for $5, I should do it. Or even worse, the guys that say, well, it's $10 1,000, but for you, we're doing a deal, $1 1,000. Oh, I got to do it. But if you never wanted it, if it's never going to do you any benefit in the first place, what is, even at $1 1,000, it's too much.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, if, like I said, I've when I was talking to you before we started the show, my background's in media. I've had a lot of media experience. I worked for a Big Six advertising agency in Atlanta, We worked on Dodge and Delta accounts. It was BBDO. And I also worked for Time Warner for a while. And I had a magazine and a newspaper. And it's funny, there's everything from paying retail to wholesale to remnant space, or getting, when we were buying, media, say, in television, you have to get a certain rating or certain points. And if the points weren't met based on the Arbitron rating, they had to comp you and make good, or, had people screening the televisions to make sure that your commercial was actually played in full, because every now and then you'll see that a commercial might come on for 5 seconds and then blank out and then complete itself. So it has to be comped. So there's different ways to negotiate and making sure that you get delivered exactly what it is that you're paying for. And there's also ways, just like you said, instead of what's it worth paying $1? I mean, in that case, what I would do is I'd position myself and say, well, why don't I give it to you since maybe I have an affiliate program? And I say, I'll pay on performance. And I'll give you an opportunity since it's only $1 and it wouldn't break you. Why not give it a shot? If you think your advertising is good as it is, then let's see if it actually proves itself and backs itself out. And if it does, great, then you're going to make more money than the $1. And they can take it or leave it. So, that's kind of where I would come in unless I absolutely had to. But of course, we all have to test unless, it depends on who wants it more. Does the publisher want it more than the advertiser? And I guess, with that in mind, why do I need a whole course on this?
Well, I think at the end of the day, you just said something hugely significant. You said it depends on who wants it more. Mm-hmm. And that comes to the heart of trying to understand the context that you're negotiating in. That when you're talking about buying media, whatever you're talking about doing, but let's just talk about buying media. When you approach that, you're thinking, okay, what is my objective? My objective is that this advertiser just wants eyeballs to their product, gets enough impressions for their product. And then, of course, the question is, what kind of deal can I get from ABC or whomever you're negotiating with? Well, part of the answer to that is, what do you know about ABC? And this is part of the thing. So you say, why should you take a course in negotiations? Because at the end of the day, the more you learn about how to prepare for something, the more, and how to prepare, not just to prepare, but how to prepare, it's significant. I don't know. I always watch shows. I always like shows like Law and Order, and there's a show called Suits on USA Network has become popular. And in all these shows, inevitably the driving force to success in winning in court or winning what they want is always based on information, always based on finding something out that gives you an edge over the other person. Because all of a sudden, the same opposing party who's confident and really pays you little attention, I don't care, you're not going to do anything to me. And all of a sudden you find out something on them that is going to totally destroy their position. All of a sudden they're in your office negotiating. Mm-hmm. And it's a sea change because people are great at keeping on a poker face. Oh, I don't need you, we're fine, have a nice day. Because they're hoping you don't find this out. And then when you find it out, it changes the whole picture. And that's the essence of negotiation, learning what you should be doing and what preparation you should be doing, so that when you get to the negotiation part of it, you're prepared with enough ammunition to have enough clout to get them to seriously consider or even give you what you want. And also, even when you're in a negotiation, most people are so busy negotiating, they don't hear a word the other person is saying. I mean, there's a classic Abbott and Costello from 1,000 years ago where they're selling vacuum cleaners door to door. They're banging on doors and banging on doors. And, of course, they were the famous comedy troupe. And they get to this one door, and they bang on the door, and the woman opens it. And she keeps trying to say something, but they won't listen. And finally, one of them throws the dirt on the carpet or on the floor and says, if this vacuum won't vacuum up that dirt, I will eat it. So she starts putting sugar on it. And he's wondering, what is she doing? She says, well, when you eat it, I want it to be tasty. And he says, why would I want to eat it? She goes, because I don't have electricity. and therein lies the essence. So many people are so busy telling their story or telling what they want, they're not asking questions and learning about the other person. And learning the types of questions, learning how you should. These are all significant things you can learn in my course. Gives you structure and a process and an approach that'll help prepare you so that you won't be eating the dirt off the floor.
That's a good point. Everything, that's going to be successful always must have a really strong platform or structure. Of course, you've always heard the saying that if a foundation isn't as solid, your house is only as solid as the foundation that it sits upon. And I would say the same thing goes with your negotiations. Like you said, the more knowledge, the more leverage that you have in positioning yourself in maybe a stronger position than the other. That way you're more likely to get the requests and the things that you want because you are knowledgeable and the other person respects you. Now, if they're, trying to sell you something and they approach you, you usually should have a better position because they're approaching you, instead of you approaching them. But of course, you can't always dictate that because they don't necessarily know what you need when you need it. But let me ask you this. What about those people that feel like they don't have anything to negotiate with? What do they do?
Well, those are the people that don't do their homework. People who feel helpless at a negotiation haven't prepared properly for a negotiation. You can negotiate with the United States government and succeed if you do your homework and you understand what the issues are. One of the most significant elements of doing your homework is also having alternatives. So a lot of people negotiate and they don't have any alternatives. How easy is it to negotiate? I knew somebody years ago when I was in college, and he wanted to buy, I think it was a Toyota. And he asked a fellow student, another friend, and the other guy says, I will negotiate for you as long as you promise me you won't say a word at the negotiation. So it turned out there were two Toyota dealers in the town where we went to school. So they went to the first Toyota dealer, and the guy asks him for all the things and gets all the questions answered. And the guy's trying to close the deal, and he says, we've got to go. And he leaves. And he goes to the other Toyota dealer, and he again structures it. And then he went back and forth 3 or 4 times until he finally got them down. Now, he probably could have done more research at each dealer and got more information. But at the end of the day, what he had that was significant is he had an alternative. He could get the exact same car from the other dealer for probably a little bit better price because they all want to close it up. And he did his homework, and he made sure the other guy didn't say anything, because the second the other guy said anything, that would send a message to the car dealer that the car dealer could get the buyer hungrier and get him to close it up. But part of the answer was the fact that he was not giving any indication of which way he was going, and he was asking the dealer lots of questions to find out what he could get and what he couldn't get. And by doing his homework, that makes a huge difference in being successful in negotiating.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think when it comes to like even media traffic, from my own experience, I used to do a lot of brokering where I'll use the travel industry in particular, and a lot of these destinations and hotel or travel packages or Carnival, like Carnival Cruise Lines or Cruise Line, Norwegian, things like that. They know how to buy media, but their media departments don't really know how to buy media in my mind. Meaning, like, they'll hire somebody that has like, maybe an assistant media buyer to a head media buyer, and a head media buyer can't do everything. So they have these little army to back them up to get all these things done. And, they're not really negotiating. They think they're negotiating, but they're not really buying the media effectively, because then they get somebody like me who goes out and knows how to buy it. And I would sit there and make really big margins negotiating for them because of the knowledge that I had buying the media and the contacts, because I had contact, because people knew what kind of business that I could, I paid on time, and I could use that as a negotiating bargaining tool, meaning like, here's the terms, and I'm willing to pay you sooner than later. And money in the bank sooner than later is a great negotiating term because it's cash flow. Every business needs cash flow. So it's not always about price. It can be about, delivering maybe, let's use another example, like newspaper. In my past in newspaper, if, I'd have clients that would buy retail, and then I'd have clients that would buy somewhat of a wholesale because of the fact that they would buy in frequency or quantity. And then there would be remnant space. And that remnant space was space that was like holes that I needed to fill in the newspaper or the magazine with hopefully an ad or I'd have to make some kind of article or some kind of puff piece to just fill that hole because it needed to be filled. But you know what I'd do is I'd go around and I'd negotiate with somebody who maybe I knew absolutely probably wouldn't buy it or pay for it, but I would trade. And what I'd say is, you give me $1,000 of pizza and beer, and I'll give you this space for 20 weeks, and it's, 10 square column inches. How's that sound? And they say, okay, that's great. So I would negotiate in a different way to get something in return for something that I give them in return.
Well, but I think the key to everything you're saying is you have so much experience in what you're doing because you have done your homework, you understand the business, and I'm sure you still ask lots of questions when you talk to people. Mm-hmm. But your key to success is understanding what the other person needs and wants. And that's because you've done your homework, because you have the experience and the knowledge and the expertise to know that cash flow is important to them. That's because you asked questions once and you learned that. Or maybe you were in a negotiation, you learned that. And that's why you're probably extremely successful at what you do, and that's why you can make a spread on the cruise line. Because those people never learned enough about what they're doing.
Yeah, they're just doing. They're just
doing.
They're not.
They never learned it.
Exactly.
You learned it, and your expertise is making you. It's like there was an article in the paper this morning about people that are flipping houses. Mm-hmm. Why can a guy buy a house for $600,000, put $50,000 in, and sell it for $750,000? Because they know the market. Because they know what it takes. Because they've done their homework. They know what the buyers will pay for, and they fix up the house exactly based on what the market will pay for. And therefore, they're successful at making a high profit on it. And it's no different in negotiations. The more you understand the market, meaning the other party and what they're looking for, as well as understand your objective. Because a lot of people don't realize, a lot of people do stuff, they don't even know what their own objective is. Mm-hmm. How can you possibly, what do they say? If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. And a lot of people approach things without a clear, sharp objective, well defined. And that's part of it too.
Yeah, I like how you said that. It's true. I mean, knowing it's almost like a game of poker in some cases, where you're trying to read the other person. And I think so. I mean, as far as my medium buy, most people are just methodical because we're basically indoctrinated, through, typical public school systems and things like that to just kind of memorize things and kind of do. We're not really taught to really think. And I think more people need to take sometimes maybe the time, and this goes for people who maybe haven't thought of this angle before, is take some time to think like what you just said. And maybe you get a raise because you can negotiate better and because you can perform better. Obviously, you deserve to obviously move up the corporate ladder if you obviously can produce better than the other person who isn't thinking, who's just doing what they're told. Of course, sometimes in corporate America, you don't always have the liberty to kind of do what you want, but if you could at least speak up in a meeting or share your knowledge and think, sometimes they're open to that ability going, hey, why not give it a try, see if it works. But knowing, like you just said, what could make the other person really happy, because if you can give them what they want, then they're more likely to give you what you want. And I think that if you concentrate sometimes more on the other person than yourself, like like you're saying, it's definitely to your advantage, whether you believe it or not. I know it has worked in my case many, many times.
Well, the other thing is, many times, inexperienced people, the other party can smell them a mile away. So when you call up to do something, whether it's to buy a car, whether it's to buy media, whatever it is, the other party can sense this person doesn't know what they're talking about. So I can make a lot of money on them. And people don't realize that their preparation doesn't just cost them in getting a better deal. It could cost them in getting a worse deal because the person on the other side realizes these people have no idea what to ask for. They don't know anything about what they're doing, so I can charge them even more money.
I remember reading a book years ago as I forget, it was, I don't know if it's quote unquote the exact same, but it was a question, it was the book about, so your success depends on how you ask your questions to other people. And it was a great book. I remember a lot of it was sort of like laying down the foundation. And then they actually asked me in the book maybe 50 to 100 questions. And there was all these lines to fill it in. It was an untypical book. Like, you probably wouldn't find it maybe in a bookstore, but it was sold privately or through these small publishing houses. And I found it really interesting because a lot of the questions within this book were the kind of questions that were kind of, you could kind of go through it and you could maybe find maybe 10, 20% of them that would maybe apply and maybe into like this type of situation or a business situation. And they were asking you, but then what you'd really realize is that those are the type of questions that I should turn around and ask other people. And I'm wondering, within your course, do you offer anything like that where maybe there's some type of getting people or inspiring people and setting them in the right direction on the platform of the types of questions that they should ask in negotiating traffic?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we don't, absolutely. I do talk about, what types of questions should be asking in a given situation. I mean, we cover, it's 6 different modules. One module is just the 5 steps to success, key negotiation tactics, kind of the best practices. Then with another module, we talk about negotiating for paid traffic. Then I talk about negotiating for free traffic. And I also talk about negotiating partnerships and strategic alliances. And finally, the last section of the course is just about pulling it all together, what's right for you. So definitely approach every specific, the different elements, the different channels of getting traffic, and how to approach those, the kinds of questions you should be asking, how you should evaluate it. In the paid traffic, I get into the metrics you should be looking at as to, how do you calculate what should I be? How do I know if it's a good deal? Just price doesn't mean it's a good deal. In media, it has a lot to do with are you going to get conversions? How do you calculate? How do you figure this out? Yeah. So I talk about the metrics in the paid traffic one. In the free traffic, it's a little bit different. How to put together the free traffic, what to say to potential, where to go to get the traffic from, as well as, bigger deals like partnerships and strategic alliances. Why are these people going to do it with me, and what kind of people to look for? So definitely I get into very specific approaches and how to do it and give very specific guidance. So definitely I go through all these things. It's 6 different modules, very comprehensive course for people.
That's really great. I like the fact that you include them, that metrics are important. They're actually, from my experience in the past working, on both sides as far as a large corporate I guess infrastructure, as far as working BBDO on like Dodge, Delta versus, a direct marketing type of company like I've had most of my life, is one type of advertising and media is more institutional where, it's trying to push the brand. They're not so much looking at the metrics, and then you've got the other side where you have a direct marketer who it comes down to accounting for every dime spent on advertising and what the ROI is. And I think, from my experience in the past, negotiation was a big deal because I used to buy a lot of newspaper. And in the newspaper, I would track it by an extension code on the phone number. And when that extension would come in, we would know exactly what ad, that phone call came in from. And that way we were able to track what type of response we got, what the closing rate was, and what our ROI was at the end of the day, because we knew what we were spending on that ad. And that way we could adjust and negotiate, after our test, because whatever you usually got on the first day of results or first few days was maybe about the same, give or take a few percentage points up or down on the 100th day that you ran that ad. And that was a big deal in negotiating, because then either one, I could go back and negotiate saying, well, listen, here's my metrics from my ad buy on my test. This is what it returned. What you're charging me right now, for instance, if I was down and I wasn't making enough money, I'd say, listen, I'm not making enough money. Can you come down and meet me at that break-even point? If you can, then we can keep it running, because even at break-even, then it's up to me to develop a back end and be able to make that profitable. And that's a good shot. Or if I'm just a few points from that break-even point, that's still worthy of continue to test, but that's where I can go back and negotiate, going, if you still want my business and money going through, then let's try to make this work. And you make that other person kind of want your business, because, like, again, depending on how you negotiate, paying them sooner than later, prepaying is a big deal. And I know you mentioned, earlier that you said that you were currently in negotiations with someone and you'd gotten them to increase their offer by 300%, and you have not even asked for anything yet. How can you get someone to increase their offer without asking them?
Well, first you take my class. I'm just kidding. I took my class before I talked to this guy. I think so many people, as I said at the beginning, so many people are rushing right into negotiating. Someone says, I'll pay you this for that or whatever. Okay, well, how about this more? They're ready negotiating. And it's kind of like running out in the street naked. You got nothing. You got nothing to work with. Just because somebody expresses an interest, you're not, they have a perceived idea of what it's worth, and you don't even know what that is. Years ago, I sold advertising in a publication that went into some major hotels. And you would call these people. I remember I called a guy once to make an appointment to come and visit him. And he said on the phone, he goes, it's too expensive. I said, how do you know it's too expensive? I never gave you a price. He goes, well, all these publications are too expensive. I said, too expensive for what? You don't even know what it is. You just have a perception of what it is, a hotel magazine. You don't know anything about the opportunity. And therein lies, the problem with negotiation. So someone calls me up and says, I want to pay you X. In this case, it's for a domain name that I own. And he wants to pay X. What's the most valuable thing you can do for somebody like that? You can spend the time first, as I always say, do your homework. Who is this person? Why do they want it? Really trying to understand the context. Why are they offering you this money? There's no fairy godmother or tooth fairy out there. So there's a motive. This person has a reason. It's like I always liken a lot of this stuff to watching Law and Order and stuff. When you watch those shows, when they pick a suspect, the first question they ask is, well, what's his motive? Mm-hmm. Because if they don't have a motive, they're quick to write the person off as a suspect. Why would he do this? Well, I don't know. He doesn't seem to have a motive. Do we have any evidence that says he did it? No. Then why do we think we did it? Well, this other guy said he's the one. But if they don't have a motive and they don't have evidence, they write that person off quickly. So when somebody contacts you or makes an offer or you want to sell something, whatever the deal is, if you don't understand the foundational elements, why are they even here? What are they doing? So first step in dealing with this negotiation, I spent a lot of time trying to, who is this person? Why are they calling me? What's the value to them? I'm trying to, and then the second part of the story is, if they think the value is X, what if I can demonstrate that the value is 5X to them? What if I can get them even more excited? So I spend time telling them how excited I am about this domain name and what the opportunity is, and can I prove it to them? So without even having to ask for anything, I'm building up the value to them. I'm getting them excited. I'm getting them, yeah, this was a good call. One of the things smart companies do is when you buy an expensive product and you have to wait for it to be shipped to you, they have amazing follow-up. They call you on the phone. We just want to let you know your order's being shipped. We arranged for this. Some companies even send you emails and things with the features you're getting in the product. Mm-hmm. Because they want to make sure you don't cancel. So they want to avoid, whether they call that buyer remorse. And, when someone's interested in buying something, the more you can establish value, the more you can get them excited, the more they're going to want to pay. Either that or there's other ways too. But, one way is just, I spent a lot of time building up value. When I sold a business years ago, I had one of the buyers, the eventual buyer, coming to my office, and I remember thinking to myself, what am I going to say to this person today? What am I going to say to this person that's going to help my cause? And I sat down and I said, well, what do I think my objective for this meeting should be? What can I get? And I blew it out of the water because I got this person so excited, she was making me an offer right there, and I never expected that because I built the value up, I demonstrated things, I really played to that person's interest. When they got there, I asked them a lot of questions. So it's up to you to set the stage. And that's why I say the smallest part of negotiation is the actual negotiation itself.
So, we had in our conversation prior to this interview here, You had this deal, I guess, with Jay Leno negotiation. How about if you tell us a little bit about that? What were you negotiating him with for?
Well, the funny thing is, you talk about going down a path you've never been before. In all, I've done millions and millions of dollars worth of business development deals with major companies, Time Warner, AT&T, Verizon, News Corp, General Electric, Amazon, all kinds of people. So doing these deals is nothing. Well, I was doing some work for a company several years ago. I had to do with the automotive vertical. And one of the guys I was working with said, well, if you really want to help us, and he was being a little funny one day, he said, you'd find out how to get Jay Leno to let us interview him for our because these were just internet shows, which obviously don't get anywhere near the audience that the Tonight Show would get.
Right.
They said, and Jay Leno, many people are not aware, Jay Leno is one of the largest car collectors in the world. Mm-hmm. He has this huge car collection out in Los Angeles.
I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that. He did a show where he let people in and showed them this like cool garage that he has with all these just like, it's huge. I mean, it's like a giant warehouse.
It is. It's unbelievable. You can see where he spends all his money in that garage. His wife probably goes crazy.
I think he's
the money that he's spent in there is insane. He's got like General Motors and Ford are probably jealous with the kind of garage he's got. So they said, why don't you get Jay Leno? I had no idea what to do. I said, well, as usual, why not? Let's have some fun. And it really involved doing a lot of homework up front to try to understand Leno's motivations, understand, where he was at and what he was doing, as well as to identify the right people to talk to. Because another part of negotiation, sometimes you're dealing with a very large organization. NBC is obviously a huge organization to try to find a way to get through to him. And trying to figure out who is the right person and why are they the right person. Because a lot of people are just gatekeepers who would just say, no, that's okay, thank you. Or they tell you they're going to do the research for you and they do nothing and call you back 2 days later and say, sorry, Charlie. So I had to first figure out, what is the context, who is the best person to try to get a hold of, try to identify that person, a lot of legwork up front, a lot of homework. And finally, when I did get that person, I had to demonstrate the value to them of what this was, and then, of course, demonstrate that you have a person as successful as Jay Leno, who has a reputation to protect, that his reputation would be preserved. So it took about 3 or 4 months, but we managed to get them to agree to it. And the guy says to me, all right, well, you could have some people fly out here to Los Angeles, and Jay be happy to talk for a half hour, 45 minutes. And I thought to myself, we're going to fly these people to Los Angeles. We surely can get more than a half hour, 45 minutes. And believe me, if I had told the people that I was doing this for that we had a half hour, 45 minutes, they would have been ecstatic. No problem. We'll go. Don't worry. We love you, Roy. But it was just my own thing. It's like, I always believe, why not? Why a half hour? Can't we get an hour and a half, 2 hours, something else? So I kept talking to the guy, asking a lot of questions. Blah, blah. By the time I was done, he agreed to let the crew come out and spend 2 days with Jay Leno in his garage and film him for 2 days, which turned into 2 weeks of interviews on 2 different internet networks, which was phenomenal. But none of that would have come about without asking a lot of questions and understanding their motivations, their interests. Turns out that, Jay Leno had seen the show, so he knew about the show. But even then, there were definitely some significant concerns about him being on a little show like this and what it could do for him or against him. And there were a lot of concerns. And then being able to convince them for Jay to agree to have him come out for 2 days, that was huge. Mm-hmm. So, and I was shocked I got 2 days. I thought maybe I'd get an hour, Never thought I'd get 2 days. And they agreed to 2 days. And, of course, the guys were ecstatic, and it turned out really well. So I think, it always comes down to the best practices. What I cover in the course, and the first couple of modules of the course spent a lot of time on foundational key practices, which, ironically, a lot of people, no matter how many times they take a class, don't follow them. And that's why it makes it easy for people like me and you to be successful, because everybody's not doing it. So it's really up to the student to follow the rules of the course and understand the value of it to them. But if really they do, I mean, as well as that, you could see your success, and as you mentioned, negotiating with the cruise lines, your ability to become the agency for the cruise line and make the spread because of your expertise.
Yeah, and not only that, I would make it duplicatable, so it wasn't just for the cruise lines. I could go to the next guy knowing this. I know what I can already get away with, so it's just replicate, and that duplicatable thing made it easy for me to negotiate because, like you said, at the car dealership, I knew what I could get away with, and I could duplicate it going to the next, and then I would just scale at that point, and sticking to that, going, well, if I can't get that and you can't give it to me, then there's more people, because believe it or not, in today's world, I mean, it seems like everything's just become more commoditized more and more. So it's more competition, more, lots of different, media's broken up, a million ways from Sunday compared to 20 years ago when there was just a few networks and not 500 TV stations and millions of websites with tons of content like there is today,
Oh, absolutely. And I think, and the kicker is, the more you negotiate with them and the more deals you do, the more clout you're going to have with them, which make you even more valuable to your clients.
True.
So, doing your homework, knowing what you're doing, having that expertise makes you even more valuable. And that's really the essence. Once you learn something, you learn what you're doing, you're more effective, and the people that you're negotiating with are also more aware that you're a more savvy negotiator, so they won't try certain things with you. They'll realize, I better just give this to him. He's going to ask for it eventually anyway. So you earn that credibility, you earn that respect, and many times they'll give you deals they'd never give to anybody else, and make media available and offerings and products that they wouldn't give to anybody else.
So do you provide those kinds of tips too? Kind of like, some people have to hit a certain quota, as far as a salesman's concerned for the month, and, how to negotiate that or take advantage of that quota. I mean, how to ask a question to get him to say, yeah, I'm under a quota, and oh, really? How you doing this month? And not even knowing, he doesn't even know, or she doesn't even know what's coming because you're asking certain questions and gathering that information to be able to have ammo to be able to negotiate and get them to be able to work hard for your business and get you what you want in the end, and obviously serve their purpose to get what they want to as well. So you provide all those little tips and tricks too, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I talk about the end of the month routine. It's really funny because sometimes nobody wants to say that, but if it happens to be May 25th and the month is ending, and you say to the salesperson, well, let me ask you a question. So does it make a difference if I give you the order by Thursday, or can I give it to you in 2 weeks? And then they're kind of put between a rock and a hard. They're not going to say, 2 weeks is fine.
Right.
No, they want it this month. So they're going to say, well, truthfully, if you could get it by Friday, I might be able to get you a little more on this, because they don't want to admit that it's the end of the month, but they're admitting it. But
Exactly.
You see, you wouldn't know that, because if you talk to, I always say when you're researching something, I always talk to 3 people. If I want to have a carpet installed, I call 3 vendors, because initially what you get is you find out who the honest ones are, and then and by talking to 3 different people, and the same thing in media, whatever it is, if you talk to enough people, eventually somebody just says, and my month end is coming up, and if you do it by the month end, I can give you a better deal. And then you learn that, you can use it with everybody else, because our whole world is based on month end.
True, and especially the corporate environment. When you're working for yourself, it's easy flow because you have no one to account to other than yourself. And that's the true in my case, being self-employed. But I'm really excited to check out that course, and I'd highly recommend anyone listening to the program here today to go ahead and check out the course too. So we're at the bottom of the show here, Roy, and how about if you tell our listening audience how to get in contact with you and how they can find your course?
Sure. Well, the course is on the schoolofinternetmarketing.com, and you just look for the negotiations course, and you'll see my name associated with it. You can sign up right there. And, if you want to get in touch with me, you could also go to one of my websites, mediajobs.com, and go to the contact screen and send me an email. Happy to help anybody if you have any questions, or you're in the midst of a negotiation, you want some advice. Happy to help everyone. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, Chad, and share some thoughts. Hopefully, maybe even in this little audio, we may have helped some people make some money.
Absolutely. And for all those that are listening to, like I say in most of my shows with everybody that I interview or things that I talk about, you can refer to the description of this video or audio format and find the links that we're referencing within the show. So I guess that's about it. Thank you for joining us, Roy, and I hope that you have a great summer and all that.
Well, thank you very much, Chad. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.